Fifth Street was Lynchburg's Black Wall Street, Black Main Street, Black Mecca, the block. But most importantly, it was our community. As someone recently said, there was a feeling when you stepped up on the block. And you know what? There still is. As you stroll down Fifth Street, imagine the old storefront buildings buzzing with patrons eager to spend their hard-earned dollars. Smell the aroma of homemade pastries. Feel the thump of a bass guitar as the bands get ready for a night of jamming. Let those sweet memories linger and infuse your heart with hope that maybe, just maybe, someday our children will know what it is like to be part of a village, to be at the forefront of a cultural explosion, and to be an active member of a truly beloved community. This week's episode remembers the past, indulges for a bit in the present, and envisions the future. Come on, let's take one more walk up on the block.
My name is Ramona Battle, and I am Fifth Street. Present the Legacy Museum. I am currently on the board of directors. I'm the chair of the exhibit committee, and I'm also the chair of the governance committee. I've been with the Legacy Museum for about 10 years now. I've also trained as a docent, and I'm here weekly providing tours to the public and answering the phone. The Legacy Museum, or the Legacy Project, started in 1998. It was the result of a number of local people wanting to create a repository or a museum which would really share and develop and educate the public about the rich history of local African Americans in Central Virginia. In the year 2000, the Legacy Museum opened up officially with their first exhibit. All of the exhibits that we've had since 2000 have been curated by a professional individual. The staff of the museum is a part-time executive director, and we have a bookkeeper and an accountant. The rest of the work that's done by the Legacy Museum staff, supporters, docents, are all volunteers. It's a small museum, but because of the volunteers and the supporters, we've done some really wonderful things in the years since I've been here. And from what I've read and from what I've learned from the founders, as well as some of the supporters, there was a real need for people to come together to really share the story of local African Americans. You had other venues here, but there was no focus directly on African Americans. And that was something that was sorely needed. And a small group of people came together and made it happen. And here we are, 21 years later, in this wonderful building that's over 100 years old. And we're still functioning and operating. We're open Wednesday to Sunday, 12 to 4, and on the weekends from 12 to 2 on Sunday. But we also will open to private individuals and groups outside of those normal working hours. What else can I tell you about the Legacy? Well, I guess I could start with the founders and tell you that each one of them were unique. Some of them were local civil rights leaders. We had a lawyer, we had some educators, we also had some artists, we also had some community activists. And they would meet weekly and talk about what can we do, what opportunities are here for us to create a museum. What they did is they aligned with the NAACP, and they took up the torch and helped them to move into this building, secure funding, and to open up the first exhibit. So it's because of the NAACP and the staff there, or I shouldn't say staff, I should say their membership, plus the founders of the museum, that we ended up with the Legacy Museum of African American History as it is here today. That is something which we're very excited about. We have an exhibit committee, which is comprised of local board members and people from the community. It's very easy if you want to become a community member of the exhibit committee. You just call, give us your phone number or your email address. We'll let you know when we're meeting, and we really try to discuss what we feel would best serve the community. In general, the last couple of exhibits that we've had have come out of the board. The board has set a direction and a tone and said, we'd really like to see an art exhibit, or we'd like to see a music exhibit. Our next exhibit that's coming up later this year will be on civil rights and human rights. So if anybody out there is willing to work with us, we meet at least once or twice a week. We talk about what the needs are, where can we find some of the research. We have already contacted a curator, Dr. Laurinette Lee, who's a public historian, and she's an adjunct professor from University of Richmond. And so she'll be leading the charge along with the exhibit committee members to bring the next exhibit to life. That's where we depend on the community. We don't have the resources to go out and purchase a lot of the artifacts. So what we do is we create a press release and we send it out. And we also send out email blasts to people on the exhibit committee and to supporters and donors from the past, from the list of those who've donated or supported us in former exhibits. And then the curator comes up with a list of things that she would like for us to include in the exhibit, and we share that information to our board of directors, we share it with the community, and we go around and we ask people, do you have any of these items? Would you mind lending it to us? Because once they lend it, like some of the things that you see here now, we keep them for about 2 years. And then, of course, we return them. We have them sign a document that indicates what it is. It lists, the value of the object that they're loaning us, and also the period of time that we'll keep it in our possession. Well, from my understanding, the founders were looking to create a museum in a traditional minority, African American, Negro, colored, whatever you want to call it, because we all know that we've gone through many, many names and many, many changes. But they must have had a vision, because they named the Legacy Museum African American, and that was not a term that was used as much 20 years ago as it is now, actually 21 years ago, as it is now. So they were visionaries. But they wanted to keep it in this neighborhood. They wanted it to be close to Fifth Street because of the significance of Fifth Street in our community. And they wanted to show the relationship that this was the community's museum. And so it should be here. It should be located in an area where it was easy for them to walk here,
Awesome.
take the bus, drive, whatever.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And this house had been vacant for quite some time. It was a single-family house, then it became a duplex. It went through a lot of different changes, because the house was erected in 1895. And so during that time, it's gone through several transformations.
It's quite fitting that it would become the
Right,
museum.
right, because it's a beautiful building. I mean, we've got the original stained glass and the pocket door and all the woodwork. All of that is original to the building. But it's the visitor center. We used to have a lot of brochures about the Legacy Museum. There's another brochure that talks about the genealogy of African Americans here in Central Virginia. We have a website that's very active. We have a virtual tour up on our website now, so that if we're not open and people want to take the tour, they can do it virtually. Yeah. We go out and do presentations. Next month, we're going to be doing a presentation for Black History Month. This program also enhances our visibility. We've traditionally had a Kwanzaa program. We did live Kwanzaa programs, and then we went to a virtual format because of COVID. Word of mouth, we put articles in the local newspaper. We've been on Living in the Heart of Virginia. One of our board members is anchor with WSET. We do programs at churches, other organizations, senior citizens facilities, Parks and Rec facilities, Boys and Girls Club, Jubilee Center, Amazement Square, Riverviews, and of course the local colleges. You know, frequently they'll call and ask us to participate in a project, or we'll go to them and ask them would they participate in a project with us. Yeah.
It's pretty far-reaching, your exposure.
Yeah, we also have partnerships with Old City Cemetery, the Lynchburg Museum, Riverviews, Poplar Forest, and we just added in the last year Red Hill, Patrick Henry's Red Hill. Our supporters, our donors, grants. We don't get any money from Lynchburg City. So we get grant money, local grant money. We also get federal grant money. We have some wonderful donors and some wonderful supporters. And then we have fundraising activities. We just came through a non-dinner. Every year we used to have an annual dinner, which was our fundraising activity. And because of COVID and because a lot of our supporters are folks that will not meet face-to-face because of their fear of COVID, especially now it seems to be on the upswing again. So they'll send in a check, or they'll do PayPal or Giveify,
That's what I was going to ask you.
or a
How do
Network
people
for
want
Good.
to
Yeah, Network for
donate?
Good. Yeah, all of those. We take all of those. They can send checks in at 403 Monroe directly, or they can send it to our P.O. Box, which is 308 Lynchburg. So we have a lot of ways. When you go on our website, there is an area that talks about donations. No, I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about the Legacy Museum. We've talked about Fifth Street, which has wonderful history. I mean, I just listened to some of the people here that talk about what happened. I think also the reason why we lost a lot of the business community on Fifth Street is because you had the development of the plaza, and then later on you had a mall. And as people made more money, they started buying cars. They didn't rely on the bus system as they did. And so that changes the landscape of the community when people can go outside their community and be a lot more competitive. Instead of going to one store to buy one item, you can now visit 5 or 6 and make a selection from those 5 or 6.
I'm Shonda, and I am Fifth Street. Yes. Before Community Funeral Home, it was Strange and Higginbotham Funeral Home, which started in the late 1800s. And then my grandfather did his apprenticeship in D.C., and they asked him to come back to Strange and Higginbotham and be manager. So in 1946, he bought them out, and it became Community Funeral Home. Well, it's always been more than just a funeral home. As far as voting, my grandfather was in politics. So he was on city council and mayor for numerous years. started the Lynchburg Voters League, which they actually worked out of the funeral home. So during elections, they would provide transportation to people who did not have rides to the polls, and then help them. A lot of times people don't know the legalities of the ballots and what they're voting for. So they would teach them what they're voting for and who to vote for and what all that meant. So, and even till today, we still provide Voters League come in here and work out the funeral home and provide transportation to the voters to the polls. We have helped people get jobs. We've helped people do resumes.
Oh, wow, I had no idea.
Yes, ma'am. Do a lot of notary work, and that's why I tell everybody it's not just community funeral home. It's more of a community service to this neighborhood, and that's what people are known for. When things happen, they automatically call the funeral home,
Oh, wow.
and it's been that way for years. His legacy is tremendous. Even today, I just hear stories where people tell me of things that he did for them, whether it's big or small. They just remember his humanity. Even just as far as funeral service, he has helped so many people, bury so many people that didn't have the funds, where other funeral homes would not help. And even in just transportation. I remember a story my aunt told me years ago. She didn't drive. Her husband passed. He actually came out and took her to the Social Security office and helped her do things outside of the funeral that she still had to take care of. He's just known for stuff like that.
You know, in talking to people as I'm preparing for this documentary, I've heard so many stories about your grandfather. And can any other stories stand out?
It's just been a lot. Like even with this business, even still today, the majority of funeral homes are still somewhat segregated. And even like if we had work done on the funeral home, he would like to try to give back to other black businesses. Like if the funeral home was bricked, he would try to find somebody in that field that was black. He said, that's who I make my money off of. That's who I want to support. So things like that, he would deal to try to help build other businesses back up. Used to be where they all used to work together. I think today it's a little bit more competitive, yes. But there were times where they did all work together, and it was friendlier. Like I said, you were in competition, but you still were part of that same category. You were embalmers, you were funeral directors.
Tell me a little bit about that. You went to school.
I went to school in Maryland, just for family reasons there. It was just easy for me to go to school in Maryland. It's an associate's degree program, so it took about 2.5 to 3 years. And then I came here and did my apprenticeship and was licensed. And that was with embalming and funeral service.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm in my 22nd year here.
All right. Speaking of you yourself, Chanda, as a black female in a male-dominated, I would think, business, what has your experience been like?
In the beginning, it was probably a little hard because there weren't many females. I think at the time when I got licensed, it may have been me and another female that were licensed funeral directors and embalmers. Today, you have a lot more females that are interested in the business and are licensed. I think just basically from the workload itself, it was male dominated, and sometimes men, they have the tendency to say, okay, you don't want to do this or you can't do this. But it's gotten a lot better because you have the lifting of the bodies, the casket, things like that, you have your older gentlemen back then, they just didn't want ladies to do. So they kind of would put you in the background, think you're supposed to be in the office and do that type of work. Or it was okay, maybe do a funeral service, but not the embalming, not the heavy lifting.
Yeah. So as far as like the embalming and heavy lifting, they have equipment or machines, I would imagine.
Yes.
Yes. Makes it,
Exactly, because you do have more females that are coming into the business, so things are a little bit easier as opposed to years ago when they had to physically do everything. Didn't want to at first. I remember when I was 16, he brought me down just to kind of work in the office to get used to it. I was like, no. So I probably was in my late 20s, and I came home for Easter one year, and actually watched Mac do the embalming in the back, and that's what got me interested. We don't have a cremation center here. We use Heritage on Grays Mill Road.
Oh, okay. Do
But
you
then
get many requests for that?
Cremations have picked up over the years, yes.
Yeah, because, I think there was kind of a stigma attached to it for
Yes,
black people at one time.
It's, I know probably when I started in 2000, we probably did maybe 2 or 3 a year.
Oh, wow.
And now it's probably at least 30%.
What do you think accounted for the change?
Just generational youth. You have some it's based on monetary issues, and that you have some that just don't believe in putting all the money in the ground, as they say. It's just personal preference. But more than likely, it's monetary issues.
Okay.
The biggest obstacle for me is people, because everyone's different, families are different, and then you're dealing with death, so emotions are always extremely high. So the biggest obstacle is dealing with people and knowing that you have to take a lot without saying a lot. As far as Fifth Street, I would like to see that the history maintains the same, because there's a lot of history here for the black people of Fifth Street. They just had so much where they relied on each other. The restaurants, at one time there were like 4 funeral homes on this one street. The movie theaters they talk about that was across the street from this funeral home, the doctor's offices, the dentist's office, everything was their Fifth Street. This is all they had. The communities and the streets in the surrounding areas, this is where they came for everything. The grocery stores. Grocery store used to be right up below the Elks. As I said, the movie theater, the dry cleaners, the doctor's and dentist's office. This was everything for them. Everything. I think they really need to know the history of not just the funeral home, but of Fifth Street and just history in general. Know where you come from to know where you're going. And I think if they learn that will keep it going. Because what else do we have?
Do you ever see it getting back to what it might have been, like black businesses coming back in here?
Honestly, I don't see that. I don't see where, and that's probably based on the city as well as trying to bring some black business, because there were some here through the Fifth Street CDC that just didn't survive. But it just depends on the city and what they offer. But I don't see many other black businesses coming here. I feel like it should stay as Fifth Street. It's okay that, at the both ends of the Fifth Street, they have the signs, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, but Fifth Street is there's so much history here. And so I just really believe it should stay as Fifth Street. Just because that you had that's all they were known. When people say they come to Fifth Street, they know the funeral home address, 909 Fifth Street. They still know the number from 50 years ago. And then everybody, the restaurants, Katie's Restaurant, the clubs that were here, because this parking lot used to be the Sportsman Club, if I'm not mistaken.
See, I was trying to figure out where the Sportsman Club was.
The parking lot right over here on the corner between Polk and,
Okay.
yeah, that was the Sportsman's Club, and the 707. This was Fifth Street. That was, I really believe it should stay as Fifth Street. I think some of them want to take the stigma off, because it used to be bad with crime and whatever, but this was home for us. Just that I think everybody knows my grandfather and what he meant to this area. I do know they're still working on the statue that's supposed to go in the roundabout.
How do you feel about that?
I love the statue. From my understanding, he's supposed to be facing downtown with his arms open and like, welcome to my neighborhood. So in this, this was his neighborhood. Everybody knew him. Like I said, they came here for everything. And he helped everybody with everything. That's still something we still try to do today. Not just funeral service, but just whatever they needed. It was
Connection.
community, yeah. I think all the businesses back then, they relied on each other. It wasn't just that I do this business so I don't help you. They depended on each other.
That's been a common theme that I've heard from people that we've talked to, is that back in the day, people took care of each other. They
Yeah,
looked out for each other.
they did.
It was like family.
Because I've heard so many stories where, it might have been like somebody might need something and he'll say, well, go talk to such and such. They own this or they know this. They just had that communication where they looked out for one another.
But Fifth Street has been important in my life because it's been a part of my life almost all of my life. I think about how, when I was growing up, that Fifth Street pretty much was the black business hub, along with a little of 12th Street too. Okay, don't want to leave 12th Street businesses out, but Fifth Street was sort of the hub of African American businesses. You had barber shops, you had beauty salons, you had a teenage canteen where people would go, teenagers would go and socialize. You had, of course, the funeral homes, Frank Hutchinson Funeral Home, Community Funeral Home, and initially, even before I was a part of it, a Whitten Funeral Home, not Whitten, I'm sorry, Wilson Funeral Home, and then a little later, Parks Funeral Home down at which was purchased by L.A. Parks from Mr. Hutchins. It was a white funeral home at one point. And so Fifth Street has always been a business hub. And it's interesting how Fifth Street has developed. Entertainment centers, the Elks Rest and the Sportsman's Club, and there was a hotel at Fifth and Jackson that has just recently been purchased, and I understand they're going to turn that building into one of these loft apartment buildings. I don't know. The white community has seen the value of Fifth Street, and many businesses, especially from Federal Street on down to Main, have been purchased by white businesses. And I'm not criticizing that, I'm just saying that's the way it has happened over the years. But Fifth Street is still Fifth Street. As you know, Fifth Street became also the Martin Luther King Jr. overlay. When I was serving on city council and as mayor, that particular issue became very, very important and very, very significant. And you had three different groups, basically. You had one group that says, we don't need to change any names, we don't need to do anything. Then you had another group that says, well, just do it from the Fifth Street Bridge, just do Fifth Street, the Fifth Street Bridge down to Main Street or Commerce Street. Just do it that way. Now, some of my good friends were on that side of the committee. Garnell Stamps was on that side of the committee. James Coleman was on that side of the committee. And the late Dr. Jerry Falwell was on that side of the committee. But there was another side to the committee. And Cesar Johnson had just come on council representing Ward 2. So, you know, you got to count votes. And so I decided to take Cesar on a ride. And our committee's view was that it should extend all the way from 5th and Main or 5th and Commerce all the way out to Fort Avenue. The reason being, Martin Luther King Jr. always talked about the beloved community. His vision was all about bringing people together. And so we felt like, even though there was opposition from folk who, you know, on Memorial, who didn't want to see Memorial Avenue, that happened. I remember one complaint was the sign of the soldiers out in front of E.C. Glass High School. Well, you may not even know about the soldier sign, the World War I veterans. And so what I did, after I heard their concerns, I drove out. Teresa, nobody had even clean the bronze on the sign of the soldiers. And I said, no, no. I said, this might be a good thing for the sign. This might get the sign cleaned up. And so our view, ultimately, and Mike Gillette was pretty much voted with us. I'm not sure whether Joan Foster, I'm sure Joan voted with us. Caesar voted with us. And of course, you didn't need but 4 votes. And I was going to vote, so that's 4. And I think somebody else voted, I'm not sure. But anyway, we got it passed. And so that became the overlay. Why I call it the overlay? We did not want to do away with the integrity of 5th Street or Memorial Avenue. Those 2 streets both have integrity themselves. But Dr. King's moved the vision, transcended all of that and still does. Really trying to bring people together. But 5th Street was certainly involved in that. People said, well, there were only, you know, you had some doctors on 5th Street. Dr. Kyle Pettis was in the 900 block. Dr. Ralph Boulware was in the 900 block. You had attorneys. You had attorney Lukingus Carey, who was in the 900. These were just in the 900 block, along with Community, along with Hutcherson. We had IB's restaurant, Shaw's restaurant. There were all 3 or 4. I hate to even call names in a way because you miss somebody. Lewis, I'm trying to think of Lewis's last name. Okay, it doesn't come to me right now. But his restaurant was in that block. You had the Harrison Theater, which was the only theater at one time that African Americans could go to anyway. We always went on Saturday. And the reason we went on Saturday was because that was when they had all of the wonderful movies that really impacted children. Mr. Lorenzo Fels was the manager. But they would have movies like Lash LaRue and Superman and, and Zorro and all of those movies. And we would go there, eat our popcorn and have a good time.
When was this?
Oh, Lord, that was in the 50s and maybe even early 60s. We finally went down to, I'm so proud of the fact that on Main Street, the Academy Theater is like it is now, because I'll never forget the one time I went there as a child, when they finally opened and let you go in the balcony. There was a rodent, I'm not going to say what kind, that went across. That was the only time I went there. I'm so glad they've done the work that they've done, so because it's beautiful now. I was a young child. I can remember when the buses were segregated. And I remember kind of vividly when the laws in the 60s began to change and you could ride on any seat in the bus because there had been a parade. I was probably 11 or 12, I guess. And I got on the bus getting ready to head to the back. And the lady told me, white lady, she said, you sit down right there. And the reason she said that, she wanted to talk to me. She said, how does it feel being able to sit there? And I said, feel fine, I wasn't sensitive to some of those, some of the larger, the greater issues that really were confronting us at that time. But then I became sensitive real quick. With my father having been on the school board, the first African-American on Lynchburg School Board, that had brought a sense of sensitivity. And he was in the mid-50s. He went on the school board, and then Bill Gordon replaced him. Well, it wasn't until people like CWC who became members of council. But all of those people, everybody that I'm mentioning, had a connection in one way or another with 5th Street. Fifth Street was just the area that really brought about that, it was a sort of a cohesiveness. While Community and Hutcherson Funeral Homes were competitors, my father, or my mother was actually T.D. Thornhill's first cousin. So, I had family on both sides, and so that was not a hate relationship. That might have been a love-hate relationship. I don't know. I don't know. But I know that Tita always was respectful, as far as I know, of my father. And I know that my father was always respectful of him. Actually, then he made a decision. He graduated from Dunbar in 1936, and he made a decision that that's what he wanted to do. A lot of barbers. My family was a family of barbers. My grandfather, his father, was a barber. Worked in Lynchburg for years, and then went to Quantico and was a barber at the Marine Corps base there for years, for a number of years, as I was growing up. But Dad had decided he wanted to go into the funeral business, and so he went to New York to attend mortuary school. And when he went up there, I've never forgotten Charlie Gilmore, Charlie Gilmore became a great business entrepreneur in our city and lived right off of Fifth Street on Polk. But Charlie went up to New York one time and was hungry, and my father fed Charlie. And Charlie always reminded me of that. But Dad came back here. He went to work for Strange and Hickenbotham, which is the name that Community had before it became Community. And so he worked for them, and then while he was working there, made a decision that he wanted to go in business for himself. Well, the only property available at that time was the property right across the street. And so that's what when he bought that property. Strange and Hickenbotham sold out, became Community Funeral Home, which became a stock corporation. And the Harrises, two brothers, actually were the principal owners, and they hired Tita to manage their business. And then later, of course, he became sole owner of the business. They passed away, and he became sole. And that's the whole story, in itself, how businesses actually developed. There were insurance companies: Universal Life Insurance Company, North Carolina Mutual, Southern Aid, Virginia Mutual, I think, was downtown. But all of these insurance companies, African American owned, and that's something that we don't have and don't see a lot of today. And yet, let's set the record straight. Right here in Lynchburg, not in the counties, but right in Lynchburg, there are over 130 African American owned businesses. Some of them are very small with the online situation. Many of them are online businesses, but we have all kinds of businesses, and that's why Fifth Street is important to me, because that was when you began to buy black. You thought about buying black at that time. Garnell and I used to do a Christmas show every year. And I have said this, and I will continue to say it. Black funeral homes, period, didn't matter which firm it was, gave more service, unpaid service, than many of our businesses. I worked in Richmond for a while, and they gave service, but not like here, not like Lynchburg. And I think that was because deep down it was in the heart of the directors, whether it was C.B. Wilson, whether it was Parks, whether it was Tita, or whether it was my father, or me, and my brother. We had just a sense of caring for the community that we served, and we have understood down through the years that, first of all, nobody has to call you, so you got to treat people the way you want to be treated. And I think that bode well. My father's building was never larger than Community's building, as large, but that didn't stop us from doing a quality business. We did it, and that didn't stop us from treating people the way we felt they should be treated. Well, your dad
My daddy,
was a part of that.
he worked, I know.
Sure.
He sure was.
Yeah, he used to walk me around, hold my hand, try to keep me straight.
Now, at some, to take
Oh,
care of-
funeral homes were always a gathering place.
Yeah, yeah.
When today people talk about the division between the community and the police, and they say that the police need to start walking the streets again. Well, during that time in the 50s and 60s, and I started working somewhat in the 60s, but I went to school in 72 to get my license. But the police officers of that day would come by the funeral home, and especially when it was cold like it is now, they'd come by first of all to get warm. We'd have some coffee, have some pizza, or something, and we'd sit there and talk. And they would do the same thing with any of the firms that opened their doors like that. And so there's some merit to walking the streets and stopping off at places because it does help you get to know the people and gets the people to know the police officers as well. Well, I'm extremely proud of the fact that I was elected to serve on council 3 different times. The first time I ran, I lost to Teresa. I'm certainly proud of the fact that I was able to serve as mayor. It was not always a positive thing, but for the most part,
The second black man?
I was second. Titi was the first, and of course Trinae was the first female. Trinae Tweedy. But that was significant. But at the bottom of everything, at the base of everything in my life, was the fact that I've served as a pastor for 44 years. And through all of that, through all that we've been through everything that we've experienced, those ministries, first in the county, and then at Trinity Church on Gray Street, and at First Baptist South Lynchburg on Tazewell Avenue. Those are really the most impactful things to me personally. But I think the greatest thing as far as Fifth Street was the fact that we were able to convince people that Martin Luther King Jr.'s name should cover not only Fifth Street, but Memorial Avenue as well. And I think that's a lasting legacy that I will always be proud of. People might not even think about it, but I think about it because it didn't have to happen. We had the library named after, in honor of Dr. King. We're going to have a statue erected in M.W. Thornhill Jr.'s honor at Fifth and Federal, you see.
That's
But
at the turn.
yeah, at the roundabout. But there are other things that are going to take place. We do have an African American History Committee that is working on some other things. We'll hear about those things later. I think in everything that they do, first of all, be proud of who you are. The second thing is always do your best to work for what you get. Work hard at whatever you want to be. My son is a truck driver. Now he went to school, but he's a truck driver. That's what he wanted to do, and he's a good truck driver. And he makes more money than I ever made. But when you really want to be something or do something, go for it. Some of the greatest names in this country are people who came from Lynchburg. Mary Hatwood Futrell, Vivian Penn, Dr. Vivian Penn, whose name embellishes the medical school building at the University of Virginia. Dr. Owen Cardwell, who's now pastor of Diamond Hill. His father was a tremendously gifted civil rights leader, and so is he. He is an icon in civil rights that people don't really always appreciate what folk have done down through the years. But young people need to get involved. They need to be a part of, I'm getting my church stuff now, they need to be a part of a foundation. And part of that foundation is the home, the church, and the education system. And if they work hard at those things. Can I tell one story before I shut up? I'm working with Dr. Cardwell in a mentoring program. And there's a young man in that program, I'm not going to call his name, but a young man in the program, very soft-spoken young man. I told him he sounded like Smokey Robinson when he talked, because he talked so softly. You know, he said, Smokey Robinson? I said, yeah, you might not even know him because you're so young. He's a high schooler. Anyway, make a long story short, he was peeling an apple the day, an orange, the day I first had a conversation with him. And he peeled it so meticulously. And he was just getting that orange right. And he finally got it broken down to the point that he was able to eat the orange. And I said, if you do like that with your work, your schoolwork, you are so meticulous at what you do, you're going to be fine. The next week he came into the class. Miss Hudson, I got something to tell you. I said, son, what do you have to tell me? I said, what you got to tell me? He said, I passed my SOS. I said, you were meticulous in taking that test. We have to understand that we need to be self-confident. We need to show the confidence. We don't have the same family backgrounds that a lot of people do. I was blessed. I was fortunate to have both parents in my home. You had both parents in your home. We were blessed. You're here at an institution of higher learning. I have worked with Virginia University of Lynchburg. I worked through University of Lynchburg now, and have worked with Eastern Theological Seminary. So education to me is an important key. It's one of the three parts of the foundation. And our kids can do so well. Don't let anybody stop you, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't do. That's what I would say to young people.
My dad, he was a combination of just intellectual, being intellectual, and just being of the rarest intenseness in his voice and in the way he acted. Because my dad was just a mover and a shaker in the Lynchburg community. Everything he did was just powerful. And every time someone listened to his voice, every time someone talked to him, he would move them. He would leave them just feeling motivated somehow. He loved children. He loved his community. He loved everyone that he ever met. He was a helper. He was a mover. He was a shaker. He would look for houses for homeless people, and if he couldn't do that, he would find his best way to put you somewhere until he found somewhere for you to live. So he was an educator. He had a sense of humor. But the one thing that I admire about him the most, he went another step forward. I mean, people usually said, no, we can't do this. No, 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 no. He would be the only one that said, yes, we can. And he would find a way to do it, even if he had to go another mile for that. So I honor my dad. I respect my dad for just everything that he's done, because he just represented the Lynchburg community so much from doing everything that he's done on and off the political spectrum. My dad was the head of LINCAG, which founded housing for underprivileged people, and he was also on the school board and the Lynchburg City Council. But being on the city council was funny because he was known as Home Alone Haskins, because he was also the one that went that extra step to say, wait a minute, I think we can do this when everyone else on city council said, no, we can't do it. He took that extra step to find a way to do it, to make it happen. He also has a park, Lynchburg Kemper Street Park, named after him because he was a very valuable person to get that park constructed. He was on his way to Washington, D.C. to Senator Chuck Robb's office to get funding for the Kemper Street station when he unexpectedly passed away from a heart attack. So my father, he still does, I can still, his legacy continues to stay within the city because there are things that he is still doing nowadays that are still helping people. I mean, Lynch CAG is still helping people. The school board is still helping underprivileged people when they can, and also city council is doing what they can do to help the citizens of Lynchburg, which is all that he wanted to do. And as I said, my father was the kind, he marched on Fifth Street during the 1,000-man march and also played tennis with Arthur Ashe at a very young age. He was voted the best dancer in his high school, Dunbar High School, when it was a high school. And I think that's where I get a lot of my caring for the community from. I go an extra mile to help out somebody that I see in need, whether it be adults, children, whoever that I see in need, I try to help them out. And I feel that his spirit is inside me doing that. So my father is very iconic within the Lynchburg community, and I think that, without him being in my life, I wouldn't be the person that I am today, and Lynchburg wouldn't be the city that it is today.
I am Pastor C.W. Dunning, and we are the pastor of the Jericho Baptist Missionary Chapel, 606 Fifth Street, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and I am a pioneer for the Fifth Street corridor. Okay, what brought me to Lynchburg? I got here in 67, 68 through the leadership of God and also under the human leadership of Dr. Walter Parrish. Dr. Walter Parrish was the pastor of Forest Level Baptist Church and also a native of Huntington, West Virginia. I came here to attend the seminary, which is now VUL. And I stayed on Seminary Hill as a student. I served as a dean for about 18 years. I served as an instructor about 18 to 19 years. And when I left, I was the interim president for the school. So that's how I got here. Well, all the time I'd been pastoring churches. My first church was New Vine Baptist, which is located 501. And then also the Mount Obed Baptist Church, which is located in Stonewall, Concord area. Stayed at those churches 2 years, and then I was at Mount Carmel, which is on 800 Cabell Street, for 10 years. And from there, to enlarge my mission work, because I believe in missions, convicted of missions, the Jericho Baptist Missionary Chapel was started right on Fifth Street, and we have been here for 46 years. Probably for the work, things like the annual toy drive, which is also 46 years old, which gives me a chance to work with the children. So I love children of the community, and we have been reaching many times 1,000 children for Christmas to make sure that they have the toys that they're needed during the Christmas time. So that would be one of the most things, I guess, that's closest to my heart. Vacation Bible School, once again. I love to do all I can for the youth and young people, and also for the elderly. Oh, it's for the better. It's no doubt about it. I mean, and when I mean for the better, I have seen people coming together, working, building on the foundation that was already here. Because Fifth Street, even before the Martin Luther King experience of making it Martin Luther King Boulevard, has a rich history, second to none. The history is so rich that most of the time, really, people don't know how prominent the Fifth Street area is. So many things have happened even before I came here. I came here in 1967, but it had a rich foundation. But since then, I have watched the community come together in many, many ways. It's not true. We do have it. We have the churches working together. We have now we have an interest from people that just want to see Fifth Street continue to mature and continue to do greater things. People work together, denominations work together. I have here in my hand a booklet whereby we're working on 50 years of churches working together in this community, and we will be celebrating the 50th anniversary this year at the Easter time, and we're getting ready for that now. And for 8 churches to stay together for 50 years, that's certainly working together. The churches that are involved in this are, I have all kinds of information. Let me get this to you. This here is the Fellowship Group Ministry. This is when we celebrated 40 years. And now we have 50 years celebrating. So you ask the churches that are part of, that's a clipping of the choir at that time. And that was a combined choir, 40 years. So, but now we're on to 50 years. So your churches that we have in this, we have like Fifth Street Baptist Church, which is just walking distance. Prayer of Faith, Church of God in Christ, Rivermont, White Rock Baptist, of course Jericho, Mount Carmel Baptist Church, and First Baptist Church, which Dr. Carl Hutchison pastored for a while, and Dr. W.R. Jones, and the list goes on and on. I mean, I'm holding in my hand, this is the 40th anniversary, but right now we're getting ready for 50th anniversary of these churches, and this is a time when people come together all over the area, you know. So I mean, this is proof in the pudding. We've been together, you know. And the objectives, and that's a good question. The objectives that they may be one, which is a thing of unity. Objective that these services are to preach Christ and Him crucified. The objective to win lost souls to Christ. Objective to sponsor these services so that they may reach the unreached. Objective to restore Christian fellowship among the ministers in their congregation throughout the city of Lynchburg and vicinity, and to continue to nurture these services by sponsoring them annually. And so we're coming up on 50 years. As a matter of fact, in just a few hours, we'll be meeting again at the Fifth Street Baptist Church to continue pulling this together for the 50th year celebration. So whoever said that or wherever that came from is just totally wrong. No, it's not dwindling. Our membership is growing in a different way.
Oh, okay.
I mean, since COVID has affected everything. You know, nothing will ever be the same. You know, including the church. Technology has really advanced over into the church, and I can't. Each church and pastor has to figure out under the leadership of God how they're going to maintain members and how they're going to do members. You know, we do certainly the traditional. We meet every Sunday and people come in, but we also do online. We also do radio, and we use any type of media that we can to reach the people. You know, so it just depends on the church and depends on the leadership. Well, yeah, you have some controversy. Here I have in my hand the News and Daily Advance clipping, and on this clipping, because I was interviewed by the news media and everything, and I could just simply read off of this newspaper, which is dated Friday, September the 15th, 1989. And we had here leaders of the community that came together, you know, for the renaming of this street. The first meeting that was held to rename this street was held right here at Jericho. And this is your newspaper clipping. And we have here, you know, M.W. Thornhill, which we're working now to put his statue right up the street.
Are you finding
that's doing well. It's doing well. All of the funds have been raised and everything, and so it's just a matter of, you know, it continuing. Work is being done in North Carolina on the statue.
Have you had?
Yeah. Well, this I would love for this picture really to go in the Legacy Museum, because it really needs to be there.
Iconic right there.
Yeah, and also, you know, when I think about the Legacy Museum, see, I was kind of Brother Berryman, Everett Berryman. He was working at the seminary with me at the time that he was starting the Legacy Museum. So I know, you know, the type of work that you're doing that's very needed. But I would love to see this in that, because it's history.
It is.
Yeah, it's history. Yeah, and this also is a picture of yeah. This is a picture of the preachers that came in town, along with people like Dr. Coleman and myself, and Dr. Wyatt T. Walker, who's pastor of the New Canaan Baptist Church in Harlem, and also MLK III. This was taken at the time that we were renaming the street, in that same time when we came in. It had to have been somewhere around the same time. This newspaper clipping is 1989. This is 89. This clipping is 1989, and all of this was taking place around that time. You know, all of it was taking place around that time. You know, what some others are doing, I guess, because I keep so busy. But when you came in, they were probably painting on the wall over across the street. And that's where we usually have the feeding ministry going on when the weather permits. Right now, we're doing all the feeding on the inside of the church in this building. This building that you're sitting in.
People that you're feeding.
People that come from everywhere. People come from everywhere.
Wow.
You know, we fed, it's the Red Truck Ministry, and newspaper clippings are about that ministry right on the outside of this wall. When you go out, you will see it.
Okay.
Because when the COVID hit, we were still feeding. And last year, we probably fed well over 3,000 families. You know, we have 6 locations, you know, right here on 5th Street, Jericho. We have a location on Rivermont Baptist Church. We have a location, First Baptist Church on Campbell. We have a location top of the hill on Madison Street, at the Madison Heights, Rebirth, where Rebirth Church is. And we have a couple other locations. There's about 6 locations that this truck, Greenfield, we go to Greenfield every Tuesday. We have about six or seven locations where the truck goes. On this truck, it's just an old converted Coca-Cola truck that we have got it converted into where you have food on it, all kinds of food, and
Like what kind of food do you serve?
all kinds of canned food. And we have other trucks that bring the produce, and just whatever you would really need, meat. And we have a freezer on the truck where we can keep the meat, from spoiling.
Where do you get the food?
Well, God has blessed us. We have people, meat-wise, we have some farmers. We have some people that raise cattle, and they make sure that we have the meat that we need. We work in conjunction also with Park Avenue. Churches donate food, canned food and stuff. Families, just well wishes, just come from everywhere, really, to get it. To get it.
Accept any and everybody?
Oh yes, oh yes. Nobody. No, we don't turn anybody away. We feed here at this site every Wednesday at 10 o'clock. I think I told you if you came, at that time you'd have a lot of people around. But we're here every Wednesday at 10 o'clock. For the winter, soon as the weather break, we will be right back out in the parking lot, every Wednesday.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, Rebirth, they're on Fridays, top of the hill, Madison Heights. Rivermont, they're on Saturdays, 10 o'clock. Well, it kind of just gets out itself, people come, people come, people need to eat, so it's not difficult, The future of 5th Street is bright, very bright, really. People are moving in from everywhere, and I literally mean everywhere, all around. One thing about 5th Street, if you know the history of 5th Street, now like where you are on this side of 5th Street, it's more business. You cross the street, it's more residential. And that's sometimes when you have disputes about things, especially dealing with technicality. That's what a lot of people don't understand, that on this side is zoned for business. But when you cross over, and move on down, it's more residential. Even though it's residential on both sides, but 5th Street itself was really where we as a race and as a people, this was our street, and
But not so much now?
well, things are mixing. I think you need to remember what we were fighting for in the 60s and what we sung about, black and white together, so you have to be careful what you ask of God, I sung the song many times. And so actually that's just what's happening on this street, black and white together. Well, yeah, in some ways, because and in some ways it was beneficial. In some ways, it's debatable. You know, because I came up because I was born in West Virginia in Huntington, and that state really is just 5% black. But I came up in an area where all of my upbringing and teachers and everything were black, you know, and it made a difference. And there were things that we did together as a black race that we don't do now. You know, I also did some teaching at Dunbar. I used to teach at Dunbar here in this city in the 80s, and I learned a lot of things when I taught at Dunbar. There are things that black people can teach other black people that nobody else can teach, and that's just true in any culture. But when you mingle, you are going to you know it's going to be a change. And that's just what it is. Not just for the schools, but for churches, for the communities. But once again, we sung that song, black and white together, black and white. So this is really what is happening in this particular area. But I believe that we're making headway, because you asked that, are we improving? And I think it's open for everybody. We have black businesses still up and down this corridor. You know, and our first black mayor, his statue is going to go at the circle. So we just have to keep doing what we're doing and speak up and go to your meetings, your city council meetings and different things, and speak up and vote, all that kind of a thing. One thing, like I say, the church has just had one pastor, and that's myself, organizer and founder of this work. The future is bright. Our prayers is that the person that comes behind me will just continue to work. Different administrations are different. He may not be as mission oriented, because outreach predominantly started here right at this church in 1977. Ministry under the name Outreach. It started right here. So we just have to see what God wants. But my prayers are that the ministry would just continue to move on and do the work of God.
Are you grooming anybody?
We don't have anyone that we are putting our hands on right now. We have probably 20, 25 preachers that have come out of this church. They're all around. It's not that, but some of them are older than I am chronologically. We have, and most of them are out of town, Tennessee and different places. We have some that are right here, and I have some that are still here with me in the church. But my prayer is that some young preacher, will take the work and will go on with it, But that's a good question. It's a very question that I'm praying about, because I certainly want, to hand it over to someone. Oh yeah, every day. Yeah, on that card, we have a house on this property. It's an outreach house. It's for low-income people. It's nothing government. And the Hands Up Lodge, which is just a few.
Is it still operational?
The Hands Up Lodge is not open.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, and at the time that it was open, which was many years, it's just recently closed. Many people that many times when they would leave the Hands Up Lodge, their first apartment or resident would be at Jericho House, which is right around the corner on Madison Street.
Is that where the van is parked?
Yeah, that's it. But homeless, we see homeless people. I see more homeless people now than I've seen in a long time.
Why do you think that is?
I don't really know. I don't really know. And to take it a little further, I see more elderly, which is very hurtful. And then more females, which is even more hurtful. And I can't really put it all together, but I do know that we need more homeless shelters, because, you know, it hurt when that shelter closed right up the street. And as far as I know, we only have one homeless shelter in the city, which is the Salvation Army. You know, so I guess it's something that's doing this. I can't put it all together, but yeah, there are homeless people. But one thing about the homeless people that I have observed in the Lynchburg area, most of them have relatives or family members somewhere in the area. Most of them. Most of them are not from out of state and out of town and like that. Those that are in the area, most of them have relatives or someone in the area. So it's something that's, you know, that's driving them, you know, to just, you know, not want to go home or be at home. Once again, it's the missions thing. My home church was Calvary Missionary Baptist Church. At one time, most of you, especially Baptist churches, were missionary Baptist churches. This is how we got the seminary, places, orphanages. This is how we got certain things done, because the church, you know, was instrumental in doing a lot of mission work. Unfortunately, many do not go that route for whatever reason. I believe in missions. I'm convicted of missions. John 3:16, you know, if you take that scripture out of the Bible, you know, the Bible would not have the validity that it has. You know, if you don't understand giving and forgiving, you really don't understand the whole essence of the scriptures. So missions, you know, I believe in it, and I can't understand, you know, what it is, but there has been a letdown in missions, and this is where you had your people serving your elderly and your children and other things. So I really can't tell you exactly why missions is not at the front of the church. I can't. You know, the churches have taken a turn, you know, like that. This area, I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it because I see growth in a lot of ways, and things don't always grow the way you think they might grow, but we just have to just remember what we prayed about and what we prayed for, you know, and there's opportunities, and people are doing great things, you know, right here on Martin King Boulevard. I serve on the CDC board, which is the Community Development Corporation, CDC. And I've been serving on it ever since its inception, which has been years now. Brother Al Elliott, member of Fifth Street, is the president. We need more blacks on that board. There's only 3 of us right now. That's Brother Al Elliott. Pat Price, she's come back on board. And we lost some of the members. To the young people, they need to become more involved. They need to be on these boards. They need to be more acquainted with technology. I mean, I'm a preacher, but since COVID, this technological work, like you got in this room, it's in demand. And young people need to qualify themselves and be able to do things. You know, I came up with the old eraser and the pencil, but that's you know, that's about gone. You know, we're moving into technology, and that's what COVID helped the church to do. You know, they forced them, they forced them to go into technology. And so that's one thing I would say to young people. You need to be trained. You need to go to school. Stay in your church. My final thought would be this, that I've said many times. Salvation and education helps to alleviate poverty. I believe that. You need your church. You need your school. You put a circle around it, you know, and then from that you can move on with your life. So that's my prayer for the young people.
I'm Lou Taylor, and I'm Fifth Street. Oh, my history with Fifth Street. Well, I was born and raised about a half a block off of Fifth Street, about a half a block off the intersection of Park Avenue and Fifth Street. When I came along, do you know that building that looks like an old service station on the corner of Park Avenue and Fifth Street? It has a green kind of tile roof there, and I think it's a florist now. When I came along, that was a Texaco station. Back in the time when you pulled up to the pump, and the guys would run out and they'd fill the tank for you and spray and wipe your windshield for you and check your oil and all of that. And if you ordered something from inside, like a pack of smokes or something like that, they take your order, run inside, get it for you, come back out and give it to you and give you your change. You can't get that kind of service now. But that was that was my first memory of that area of town. Basically right across the street from where I grew up. Right around the corner, Fifth Street Baptist Church. You know, they have convenience stores now, but we had them back then too, but we didn't call them convenience stores. Nowadays, up north, I think they call them bodegas. But they were like little mini supermarkets. You could go there and you could they had a meat counter. You could get like sliced meat, sliced bologna or whatever, pork chops, chicken, so forth, eggs. You could get them right there. Well, right around the corner from where I lived was J.W. Harper's store. It was run by a man named Mr. Robert Miller who lived on 8th Street. And I used to go there and that's where we did our grocery shopping, basically, unless we had to go to a supermarket for something more. Right there in the neighborhood. The area is kind of what we call a food desert now, no supermarkets within walking distance. But back then, you couldn't go 3 blocks without coming across somebody who had a store like Mr. Miller's.
And you lived there the majority of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I've always maintained a residence there. I've left, and I was in the military for a period of time and so forth. But my residence has always been there, and I never really had any had any desire to move. I love that area. I grew up there, and you know, it's okay to stay somewhere, right? Fifth Street was basically the center of black social life in Lynchburg. There was a little less of a central black social life down on 12th Street, 400 block of 12th Street. But Fifth Street was basically the strip. It was what we call the block. You remember that term, the block? Go down on the block. We're going up on the block. The block was Fifth Street. And the block stretched from basically where Park Avenue intersected Fifth Street all the way down to maybe about Clay Street, where Gray's Restaurant and I can't think of the name of the donut shop that's there on the corner there, but Clay Street there. And all the black businesses were along that strip. And there were some white businesses there too. But most of the businesses, especially in the blocks between Monroe Street, Polk Street, Jackson Street, Federal Street, Harrison Street, most of those businesses were black-owned businesses. Oh yeah, you know, you mentioned Jim Crow. One of the necessities of Jim Crow was that there were certain institutions who simply wouldn't do meaningful business with us as black people. So we had our own institutions. We had our own banks. We had our own insurance companies. My Aunt Lois worked for Virginia Mutual Insurance Company, a black-owned insurance company out of Richmond at the time. And the Lynchburg branch manager was O.C. Cardwell, the father of
O.C. Cardwell Jr.
yes, who was one of the first black students to attend E.C. Glass. Lived across the street from me over at Park Avenue. Yeah, they grew up there. Verlies, his sister, yeah, they all grew up right across the street from me. This was, for Lynchburg, this was, with the exception of Pierce Street, which you could think of as like the Harlem. The area of town that I grew up in, right off of Fifth Street, was a certain black mecca here in Lynchburg. I was next door to, right on my block was Miss Hattie, gosh, I can't think, now all of a sudden I'm blanking on her name. But in the next block, we had Dr. Mitchell's house. We had Miss Braswell's, who was the wife of Dr. Braswell, and I went to her at Bethune Nursery School. It was called Bethune Nursery School then instead of Bethune Early Learning Center, I think now. I went to school there, my first daycare, and she ran that place. On the other side of that was Mr. Fells. He had before the state lottery, he had a business, okay. And so forth. So that area of town had kind of upscale black citizens, even though we were within the redlined area of Lynchburg that was designated, you know, for black people, basically, when you come down to it. There was the Phyllis Wheatley branch of the YWCA on the corner. And they did things for the community. I remember going down there on Saturday mornings and all us kids sitting down cross-legged on the floor watching 8mm movies from a projector onto one of those pull-down screens with the stand, you know. And then, you know, being served popcorn and Kool-Aid and whatever was affordable for a bunch of kids to attend a little Saturday get-together party there. Where the community funeral home parking lot is now, there was this building called the Sportsman's Club. We used to my first band used to play at the Sportsman Club. My first band was the Ebonairs, put it together when I was 14 years old. Wow. My father became the manager of that band. And we used to play at the Sportsman's Club, and we used to play at the Elks Club, and we used to play at some other venues around town that were not on Fifth Street, and we used to play out of town. We used to play down in Appomattox County, Burkeville, Danville. We used to play all over, but we were a staple at the Sportsman's Club. I had my band, the Ebonairs, already at that point. But you wouldn't know that because you were a nice girl who never got out of the house and never went to, that's right. Yes. But we used to play at the Hunting Branch Y. It was the YMCA.
2 blocks up the street from that.
How could you not?
Mama would not let me go down there.
Well, Mama might have had your best interests at heart, actually, you know. Because all of the bands used to play there. All the black bands used to play there. The Dynatones, my band, the Ebonairs, the Chosen Few.
Who else on the band? You said about 10 of them.
Yeah, I could spit out about 10 names without even. Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, yes, I am. Yeah, I could spit out about the Vistatones, the Dynatones, the Ebonairs, the Chosen Few, the Steptations. The Jivers, the Blue Notes. Rebirth that had Willie Cruz on bass. They had Rod Garland on drums, and organ player. For some reason, I'm blanking right now, and I know it's because I'm, you know, on the show. but Bradshaw, Joe Bradshaw,
Okay.
on organ. We had a guy from Lynchburg, Donnie Brown, who had a hit song. I listened back to that song just the other day on YouTube, and it's one of those fresh 70s type songs that should have been way bigger than it was. But Donnie was an incredible organ player too. I don't know if he's still alive, but I know that he went to Russia for a while. He was in Australia for a while, and he may still be kicking around. But he's out of Lynchburg. All these bands. There was the band that was associated with the Phase 3 Club over on Hollands Mill Road. The name of that band was Cold Black, I think. We had Easter Harris was in that group, and I'm trying to
Were
think.
there a lot of females involved, or was
There were some females.
But it was mainly. It seemed
Yeah,
like
mainly, mainly guys. You know, we were not quite as enlightened as we like to pretend that we are these days. But yeah, there were females
It was
involved.
a wholesome thing to do.
Yeah.
There were so many things that you could have been doing.
You know what has supplanted bands in this day and age? Gangs. Where we made music, you know, it was that thing. And because there were so many bands in town, you know, steel sharpens steel. So my band goes to see your bands and see, oh, y'all doing the latest thing. We can do that a little bit better. We go back and we rehearse and they come see our band and, oh, okay, they're doing that, you know. And
That
so,
was a healthy one.
yeah, exactly that. A number of great musicians have come out of that. You know, Larry Scott, Nat Reeves. I just posted something about Nat Reeves on online today. Are you familiar with Nat?
I know the name.
Nat is one of the greatest living jazz bass players in the world.
Really?
He's straight out of Chambersville Street. He's played with the greats. I have a theory about that.
Please,
First of all, I've done a whole lot of traveling. I've done a whole lot of traveling. And per capita, when you take into account the size of this city, I've never been to any city anywhere that has more talent than Lynchburg, Virginia, okay? And I have a theory about why the talent develops to such a degree here, and also why you don't know more about it.
And like Carl Anderson, another phenomenal talent.
Carl Anderson. The thing is, Lynchburg is a great place to develop whatever talent you have because you have very few distractions from it. It's the worst place to showcase your talent because there historically has been no place to showcase it. Now, my personal theory is that I think that Lynchburg is a great place to develop a skill because you can work on that skill without distraction. Or at least I'm going to give a caveat.
Okay.
When I came along, you could work almost without distraction at developing that skill if that's what you wanted to do. There were other things that you could do. I chose to work on that skill. And I think a lot of other people who develop their musical skills here in Lynchburg do that same thing and can do it pretty easily because there weren't a lot of other, frankly, things for them to do. And then once that skill is developed, which is kind of misleading in itself because your skill is never developed. I'm not through learning how to be a better musician. You know, I just don't have to learn the basic stuff anymore, but I'm still refining myself. But once you get to a certain level where you want to be playing out, at least when I came along, Lynchburg didn't offer a whole lot of places, but the places that they did offer supported the bands and so forth repeatedly. They were always there. We were always going to be in rotation with the other bands at the Sportsman Club or at the Elks Club or at the Hunting Branch Y or at Southside Country Club down in Appomattox or the Phase 3 over on Hollands Mill Road or Smitty's out in Amherst. You know, there and a number of places. I've probably forgotten more places than I've already named.
So you were pretty much playing
Yeah, pretty much every weekend, to the point where when we weren't playing on the weekend, there was a little a little beef about, well, why aren't we playing on the Dynatones playing this weekend? Why ain't we playing this week? You know, so there was that. As far as me personally, that has my thoughts about it has changed over the years. I wasn't particularly interested in music. I think nowadays if I had come along, they would have said he's on the spectrum. You know, they'd say he's on the spectrum. Cause I was into stuff like astronomy or chemistry or microbiology. I was into the ologies, you know, and astronomy in particular. By the time I was doing like 4th, 5th grade, I knew 100 or so different star names and their locations. I knew all the constellations in the sky. I wanted to be an astronaut. You know, that was big at the time, the Apollo. And I just knew I was going to grow up being an astronaut. Until in the 5th grade, there was a musical aptitude test in the auditorium at Robert S. Payne, where I was at school. And they just gave everybody in school a general musical aptitude test. And
There was Robert S. Payne predominantly black at that time?
it was totally black at that
I
time.
don't know if it was, well, it's mixed now, right?
Yeah. We Lynchburg schools. I'm not sure the Lynchburg schools had totally desegregated
I think
at
you're
that
right.
time.
Yeah. I don't think they did that till around the time you and I went to junior high school. Maybe.
Right. Because my first year at Dunbar was still segregated, and yeah.
It was?
Yes. My first year at Dunbar, I went to Dunbar, and then I went to Linkhorn, which is where I met you, I think.
No, I was just saying that's got
Okay.
at Glass.
Oh, okay. All right. So I went to Dunbar 7th grade, went to Linkhorn 8th grade, came back to Dunbar 9th grade. Now Dunbar 9th grade was integrated, but it was still segregated.
I met you there because I would have been in the 9th grade at Dunbar.
Yeah.
We were in the same grades, I think. You didn't accelerate or anything.
No, I didn't. As a matter of fact, I was one of the oldest in my class because my birthday came after September 1st,
When's your birthday?
October 10th.
Oh, you're not quite a Scorpio. My birthday is November 25th.
It's okay. I'm fine with being a Libra. All right.
I'm sorry, I digress.
That's got to go because I can't be telling folks when my birthday is.
We'll edit that out, I promise.
You don't have to worry about that because my birthday's posted on Facebook. You know, so anyway, what was I saying about? We were talking about Payne School. Oh, the aptitude test at Payne School. Well, I aced it. I think I was the only one in the whole school to ace it.
What was it?
It was
music
just,
aptitude.
yeah, it was a musical aptitude test. They would do stuff like they would play a note, and then they'd ask you, okay, they play another note and say, is this the same note or is this a different note? And I'd say, okay, it's a different note, you know, okay, and then they'd play a little musical phrase, and then they'd say, they'd play like 3 or 4 musical phrases after that, and which one was the first phrase played and so forth. And I said, okay, so it's this one. And apparently I aced that. And that was the day I decided, okay, well, maybe I can do the musical thing.
So this was in the 5th grade.
This was 5th grade. Yeah, we started playing those little white flutophones that cost $1 and so,
Oh my gosh.
and everybody played that until they got weeded out. The ones who didn't get weeded out got to choose a real instrument for 6th grade, and I chose the saxophone. Wow. And back then in public school, apparently, if you were you had the aptitude to play an instrument, they would give you free lessons after school. So I took free lessons at Payne School from Mr. Himmelwright, who I'm friends with his daughter right today on Facebook. Mr. I think Fred Himmelwright. Took lessons from him, and then basically from there I was in school band at Dunbar in 7th grade. I was in school band in 8th grade over at Linkhorn, and then I ditched the whole school band thing. I put together my own band. Well, first of all, let's call integration what it was. It was assimilation, because integration would mean that white folks came and spent their money in black businesses, and that didn't happen. All that happened was once the white business doors opened up to black people went and spent their money in white businesses under the assumption that they must be selling something there that's of better quality than what I'm getting over here. And so that made them get our dollars and their dollars too, Whereas previously, our dollar circulated pretty much within our own community because of Jim Crow, separate but equal. And once that was no longer, then a few other things came to be. President Johnson's Great Society had a part of it that was about housing and urban renewal, basically coming in and renewing, or what was called renewing, the neighborhoods that had been what had been termed blighted, and so forth. So businesses shut down and were knocked down and so forth like that. That especially happened down on 12th, on the block down on 12th. But some of that went on up on 5th too. But mainly the clientele went elsewhere. We had.
And never came back.
You think about the fact that so many things that were available to us on 5th Street were now available at Pittman Plaza or Fort Hill Village or Boonesboro Shopping Center and so forth. Gas was cheap. We could travel out there, and we had,
People started, either they started making more money maybe?
well, yeah.
The jobs were more diversified that they could go. They weren't just doing menial jobs anymore maybe?
Well, that was certainly a part of it. I think they were making more money, had more disposable income, and
Started buying vehicles maybe.
yeah.
More.
But the other thing about that is the traditional businesses that we frequented, we didn't frequent them anymore. We kind of left them to die on the vine, and that was sad because there came a point when we missed that. There came a point when we missed.
Careful what you ask for.
Yeah, exactly. I remember one phrase that Martin Luther King had near the end of his life was something about we have to be careful that we aren't rats boarding a sinking ship. That we have to be careful what we wish for. But then too, there's always the passage of time. What's popular now is passé 5 years from now, and as I've gotten older, I realized that everything that we're going through in life, there's another component to it that we don't have anything to do with, and that is what's going on in the general society at the time you're moving through this period in your life. At that time, when I was coming up in the 5th Street area, I didn't realize it, but I was living in the last days of 5th Street's vibrancy. 5th Street had pool halls, it had dance clubs, it had restaurants, it had stores, theaters, it had car dealerships, it had service stations. There was where the Family Dollar is right there at Federal? Okay, and there's on the corner there's something that looks kind of like a vacant lot. It's kind of a little seat, what I call a pocket park. Right there used to stand the old Virginia Market, which was a supermarket, and I think it was just either a local or state-owned. Maybe there are a few in other cities. But Virginia Market, we used to walk down to Virginia Market from our house and do supermarket shopping. If we wanted to go elsewhere, the first Kroger in Lynchburg, the only Kroger in Lynchburg at that time, we used to go to all the time, and it was where the Family Dollar on Ford Avenue, right at Ford Avenue and Campbell.
I know exactly what
Yeah, right there, right across from Miller Park. Cat a corner from Kenny's. Used to be the Kroger.
Parents used to go there every week, every other week.
Yeah, we used to get the S&H, the top value stamps, and there was S&H green stamps too. Yeah. So many things like that, well, as kids, we look at the little background things of our lives and go, this is going to go on forever. It's been going on forever. It's going to go on forever. And then those things, one at a time, just start disappearing from your life, and other things start popping up in your life that weren't there before. And before you realize, when you look around, you hardly recognize anything from when you were a kid. And this was one of those things like that. Nobody just came down 5th Street and shut off the lights one night. It died a little bit at a time. I thought that more was made of it than it needed to be, and I thought that the reasons given were not strong reasons, but in my mind, I also thought, well, they don't have to be strong reasons because really they're only masking a certain sentiment that, folks didn't want the street to be named MLK, partially because in other cities, streets named MLK go through the black section of town. Well, guess what? This MLK would go through the black section of town. It's Lynchburg. Martin Luther King is one of the 10 martyrs etched in stone at Westminster Abbey in London. One of only 10. One of only the 10 modern martyrs. Martin Luther King is there. And Lynchburg can't rename Fifth Street after a man who the world thinks is so great that he's one of the marble statuaries at Westminster Abbey. I remember when the 460 Expressway connector came past Liberty University, right around the time that Jerry Falwell Sr. passed away. I can't even remember how short a time it was between the time of his passing and the time they named that road after him.
There wasn't a lot of contesting of that.
No, there wasn't any contesting of that. And I know that Martin Luther King wasn't a resident of Lynchburg. I understand that. But seeing as how Fifth Street went through the black section of town and seeing as how Martin Luther King's presence in national and international, on the international stage, brought the condition of black people in this country to a world spotlight. I would have thought that it would have been a no-brainer that this street renamed for someone who had such an effect on the lives of everybody who lives along and adjacent to that street. Why should folks who don't live in that area, deny the folks who do live in that area the privilege of changing the name of the street? And I think that the rebuttal was something about the cost of changing the address on the letterheads. Well, that sounds reasonable, but not to me.
Not to me either.
Yeah.
They would change it. If it was something that they supported, they would have no.
Oh, yeah. It would have passed as quickly as, say, changing the name of that expressway to. Tita was my cousin.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Tita was Lynchburg's first black mayor. Mm-hmm. And this is in a country where not too many generations ago, Tita's ancestors were probably slaves. You want to talk about an American success story? That's one. Mm-hmm. So, when there's blowback about that, look, it begs the question, well, what is success in this country for black people? What is it? Can the descendants of slaves become mayors? Can descendants of slaves become this or that or whatever? And can that be celebrated? Can that be celebrated if the would-be conquerors of a losing side of a fight could be celebrated? Why can we not celebrate the successes of the underdogs? We've been told that that's socialism.
Yeah.
We've been told that, that's not gathering together for the communal good. Mm-hmm. We have to call it something else. We can't call it what it is. we've kind of lost that because the the closer we've gotten physically, the more distant we've gotten emotionally, and in terms of who our next door neighbor is. You know, I don't know my next door neighbor's names. But when I was a kid, I knew every family for 2 blocks in any direction, and they knew me. And if they saw me messing up in the streets, you know, before I got home, my family would know about it because phone calls, you know, it literally did take a village, and that village was there for all us kids. And that's one of the things that we don't have anymore. Nobody wants to get involved in anybody else's business. Teachers are, well, now we're strained. But my point is, we looked out for each other a lot better back then because one of the things that we knew was that all of us in that neighborhood, all of us in that area, to a certain greater or lesser degree, we were all going through the same thing. We were all going through the same thing. You know why, and it still happens right today. I don't know amongst the younger generations, but black people of a certain generation, whether you know them or not, you see them in public, you still nod, you still acknowledge it. You know why? Because if we didn't acknowledge each other in public, nobody else was going to acknowledge us. Nobody else was going to acknowledge us. You know why we call each other man? You know why black males call each other man? Because the white folks always called us boy. And we called ourselves man to express to each other who we really are. We weren't boys. You know, I'm 66 years old. You don't call me boy. You know. I see you. I see you. This world doesn't see you. This world doesn't see you, but I see you.
And I never thought, like, why do I do that?
And I don't know if anybody else sees you here in this place, but I see you, and I want you to know that I see you, and I know that you see me too.
The funny thing is, I don't even realize why I'm doing it.
Can't help but do it.
That's powerful.
Can't help but do it.
That is whoa. But this younger generation don't necessarily have that same.
And I don't know whether that plays into.
I'm getting emotional.
I don't.
Yeah, that's deep.
Well, yeah, you know, those are cultural things.
Yeah.
In my mind, and I'm just going to go off a little bit here. In my mind, the white folks don't need that because they already have the structure.
Yeah.
You know, we need that because within the structure, we weren't the cogs. We were just the oil that lubricated the machinery. You know, and so we speak to each other because if we don't speak to each other, no one would speak to us. And that's from back then, of course. But to a certain degree, certain things are recycling, and I hate to see it. Certain boundaries that had been erected, boundaries of decency and respect that had been erected, have become eroded over the last 5, 6 years, 5, 6, 7 years.
Sure have.
And we can't lose that amongst ourselves because we really are out here twisting in the wind by ourselves if we do that. Oh yeah, that was yeah. I mean, just going down, crossing Polk Street, on 5th Street, was a rite of passage for me. First of all, because that was when I knew I was, quote, kind of semi-grown. I could step off my block and cross an actual street and go into the next block. Well, that next block was where Trevi's Pool Room and, you know, the barbecue restaurant, the Bobby's.
You wanted to play pool.
Yeah, you shoot pool down there. I got skint down there a number of times, I will admit, but I learned how not to get skint. Now, it does take a little bit of practice to stay on that, so I probably get skint again. But I learned street smarts down on 5th Street. You know, I learned to spot the scam. You know, learned to spot the shady, you know, learned what to do and what not to do, when to do it and when not to do it. There were a few illicit spots of, let's say, recreation around, but I didn't know anything about those. Yeah. Are we through?
We're going down the path. We're as done as you want to be.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, let's go. You're good. You are good.
I didn't even get
You are
into
good.
the nibs are-
Right.
But no,
Yep. Well, my fondest memory of Fifth Street would probably be playing the Old Sportsman Club.
what was so special about
That was, I kind of felt like that was our house. There was this, the inside of the Sportsman's Club. Well, you go in through the doors, and there are these two big wide staircases going left, or going right, and going left up, and they would meet on the second floor, and you'd come down, and then straight ahead would be entrance into the big dance hall. Stage on this end, two level stage. Yeah, 2-level stage, bar at the far wall that ran the length, and then here was the dance floor, and there was actually a balcony that ran the length above where you would enter the room. And we'd play, and the sound was horrible. All right, I mean, it was just horrible, just echoey in there, just hard walls and glass and so forth. And it would echo so bad, man, you could play the show and then go back to the back of the room and hear the show playback through echo. But we didn't care. We were young. We were 14, 15, 16 years old, 17 years old, had no business even being in there because they're selling alcohol. And at that time, I believe, well, to be honest, I think we got into the era where they dropped not only the voting age, but also the age you could buy alcohol and tobacco products to 18 at that time. Then it went back up later on. But yeah, all of us were too young to be in that club. But, you know, now that I think about it, I was probably too young to realize, but that club was probably illegally open anyway. Because, but it was all good. It was all good because it was good, clean fun. Regulars came out. There were regulars who would come out for all the different bands, followers of the different bands, and of course the band rivalries. And that's how we became who we became. That's how we became who we became. What can I say? You know, I love those days and I miss those days. And if it was possible, maybe I'd love to relive those days. But you know, there's a future to look forward to, and I'd rather see what's coming.
Briefly. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure that it should.
Okay.
I'm not sure that it should because I'm an adherent to a philosophy of you can never step in the same river twice. You know, those waters have flowed on. You know, you try to step in the same river, it's not the same river, it's new water. So I think, you know, like anything that grows, it has to evolve into what it's meant to be. One of the things that I find a little bit frustrating about Western culture in general is this tendency to try to preserve a moment in time as if it's static and lucite. The only thing that's static in life is death. You know, if we try to go back and recapture something, you're denying the natural movement of the past into the future. Yes, you can go back and commemorate it. Go back, you can, you know, if you want to do museums, if you want to do commemorations, that's fine. But to reclaim Fifth Street as a mecca of black culture feels artificial at this point. Fifth Street didn't become a mecca of black culture artificially. It became that out of necessity. So whatever supplants it should be what's coming naturally, what is necessary to to take the place of that. Not try to reacquire something that, you know, is already passed on and quite frankly probably wouldn't hold a candle to what the reality was back in the day. No, we should be looking forward. We shouldn't be looking back.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you. Thank you all for having me. My name is LaWanda Waller, and I am one half of Mother Nature's Vegan Soul Food. I am co-partner with my fiance, Tony Williams. We've been here at 616 5th Street for a little over 4 months, and before this location, we were located on Lakeside Drive. We are Lynchburg, Virginia's first Black-owned vegan soul food restaurant. The owners, both owners, are fully vegan, so this is how we eat at home, this is how we cook at home, and we just wanted to bring knowledge and health to the community. This is an all-vegan restaurant. We don't do any animal meats, we don't do any animal products, we don't do any dairy, so everything is non-dairy. It's a great option for people who have alpha-gal or who are gluten-free. We do have gluten-free options, and we don't do any dairy at all. So we do all plant-based items.
Okay, great. What got you started? I know you said that you and your husband wanted to eat healthy, but what made you make the commitment? Because we all say we're going to do this, and we just don't do it. We got to grab that fried chicken.
Yes, yes. Well, when I met my fiance, he was already vegan, so that inspired me. I did have some health issues, some issues that were hereditary, medical issues as far as my blood pressure and my weight, and just gut issues, and I wanted to get those resolved. And by switching my diet to a non-meat diet, it helped a lot with weight loss and with high blood pressure. So this is the way that we were eating at home, and anytime that we wanted to have a date night or just a family night, there was nowhere vegan for us to eat here in Lynchburg. We would always have to go to Roanoke or Richmond or Virginia Beach because there weren't any vegan options. So we wanted to bring those options to our community. We have convinced some family members to become part-time vegan, vegetarians, pescatarians, but they will try. They've all been willing to try something, and even down to the kids, there's always something that they will try. So we do all plant-based meat substitutes. So there are some items that we make here in the restaurant that are house-made, and we use protein. We use chickpeas, a little soy. We do a lot of things with jackfruit, banana blossom. So we keep it very healthy, and we try to make it as close to that old-fashioned taste that you got from Grandma's soul food cooking, because I use a lot of recipes that my grandmother passed along to me. So we try to incorporate the vegan lifestyle in those recipes. So if you loved meatloaf, you know, you're gonna get meatloaf. It won't be, you know, animal meat. It'll be something healthier for you. So we try to do a lot of recipes that are soul food recipes. YouTube, there's a famous chef that I follow on YouTube, and her name is Tabitha Brown, and she's a famous Black-owned, she's an author of her own cookbook. She has a YouTube channel. She pretty much markets anything vegan. So I follow her a lot. I get a lot of inspiration from her. We were at a shared location. It was just an idea that my fiance and I had to do a pop-up shop. And we were friends with a couple who owned a restaurant on Lakeside Drive. And they were willing to give us a chance to come in and just do a pop-up shop. And that pop-up shop ended up doing so well that they were like, why don't you guys come in and we can give you 3 days out of the week, and we take the other 3 days out of the week. And that gave us time to build a clientele and get our name and our product out there. And once we grew within that position, we decided to come here and open up here.
How has life been or business been working here on
It has been wonderful. We feel like we're right here in the middle of the community, so we get traffic from both sides of town. In this area, we have gotten lots of deals with catering. With local churches, we do meal preps where we will prep your meal for the entire week. And we have a lot of people that work for the hospital and work for the school system that don't have time to prepare their meals. So we prepare their meals for the entire week. So this location has been really great for that. Busiest days are Tuesdays and Saturdays. Saturdays, understandably, because we do have a brunch menu on Saturdays, and we open an hour earlier on Saturdays, so we open from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., and we have a full brunch menu that's available all day or until we sell out. And then Tuesdays are pretty busy as far as deliveries, and we do deliver through Grubhub. We have the Grubhub app, and you're able to request delivery from there.
I'm still trying to figure out why Tuesdays.
I don't know if there's something else going on in the community. I think the coffee shops and like some of the other little shops on Fifth Street are also busy on that day because there's no parking here on Tuesdays. It's just the restaurant is open Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. to 7 p.m., Saturday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Sunday we're closed. Any of those days you're welcome to dine in or carry out. You can call ahead if you want to call in your order and just pick it up here. The phone number is 434-215-3270, and you can call in your order and we'll have it ready for you to pick up. We do a lot of promotion through Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Mother Nature's Soul Food Vegan, on Facebook, where our menu is updated daily. I normally update it every night. If there's any changes to the menu or any changes to our hours, we update there. There's a link on our Facebook page that takes you to our menu and takes you to our website. So we promote on Facebook and Instagram quite a bit. So the Spalfredo is something that I found on TikTok. It was a viral recipe, and it's been different people trying it all across the web. So I decided that I would try it, but I would veganize it instead of having it done, you know, the regular way. So a Spalfredo is actually two forms of sauces. There's the Alfredo sauce at the bottom, and then there's traditional spaghetti sauce at the top, and we use non-meat crumbles, peppers and onions to make it. But it's very good. It's one of our most popular items that we have on the menu. We would just like to welcome everyone to come in. We are new to the community. There's lots of stuff here to choose from. If you're not vegan, we have options that have been veganized that may have been some of your favorites, and you may want to try them in a veganized version.
Also, I noticed you have other things that you sell. This reminds me of like a bodega. A bodega, is that what you call it?
Yes.
Tell us about the other things that you offer. What other things do you sell?
So we also offer all natural hair care and supplements. So we're big on sea moss. We do a sea moss smoothie in-house. We also make a sea moss gel. We have sea moss vegan capsules. We promote natural hair care. So we have a lot of natural hair care products. All natural toothpaste with no fluoride and no chloride, all natural deodorants and soaps, body washes. So we try to promote health. Thank you. Thank you all for watching. And I am Fifth Street.
Doing